Aew Dynamite tonight, August 7th, Winston-Salem, North Carolina. We get a WWE Hall of Famer joining the Aew Dynamite tonight. We also get AEW bookend matches with not a lot in the middle for tonight's show. Winston-Salem, North Carolina, were you entertained? Were you entertained with the main event? We had Jeff Jarrett going against Bryan Danielson with a little Hall of Famer in the mix. But let's go ahead and let's get in. I'm your host, Bryan. Hi, Ballard. And we open up with the MJF match with his little bit of a mini build-up feud on Dynamite against Kyle Fletcher in a title eliminator matchup. The bell rings and they're underway. MJF grabs the mic and tells fans to shut up. He tells Fletcher that he locks up with him like a man, or he can take the title and walk out of town. MJF gets in the ring and kicks Fletcher. Fletcher then rolls, and we get just a 1 count really quick. We get a lot of back and forth action in this one. Remember, this feud has been building up the last so many weeks, with leading into the back and forth between these two until we get this final showdown here. We get MJF mocking the fans. We got Kyle Fletcher playing his role in the matchup. He ultimately covers MJF in the middle of the matchup for a 2 count. Or should I say a 1 and a 2. MJF works on Fletcher in the arms and breaks the hold. Fletcher sends MJF to the floor. Fletcher runs through the ropes, sending MJF into the barricade. We get some outside action back and forth on this one. And then we get Fletcher eventually on the outside again, sending MJF over the barricade, rolls him back into the ring then. And then ultimately, we get a little bit of a DDT, and then we get the champ covering, but he kicks out at the 2 mark. We get "This is awesome" chant from the fans. The fans were crowded. They love their MJF, and they love the work he does in the ring. MJF then charges at Fletcher, but he's met with a boot to the face. And then we get a destroyer, a Canadian destroyer that is. And then we go a little bit further in this matchup, and it ends up with Fletcher thinking a little bit, and then he tosses it out as he was debating on using a screwdriver at the end. But MJF low blows Fletcher in that decision, and as the ref's back is turned, and MJF then hit Fletcher with a big kick and drops him with a huge brainbuster for the 1, the 2, and the 3. Winner by pinfall, the AEW American Champion, MJF. After the match, we get Will Ospreay. It tries to get out of the viewing area, and it was locked up. And MJF then knocks out the ref with the title belt, and MJF puts on the Dynamite diamond ring and nails Fletcher as he gets back to his feet. MJF continues the assault. He's busted open. MJF yells at the camera and says, "The blood on Ospreay's hands." Then MJF picks up Fletcher and calls for a Tiger Driver, but Ospreay now making his way to the ring. And MJF flees in through the ring, escapes to the crowd, and Ospreay calls for the medical staff as Don Callis makes his way into the ring. Nice little opening matchup, continues the story. I like this one because it got us the mini feud of Fletcher versus MJF a little bit in the opening. MJF draws in the crowd immediately on the show. The fans like it. And then we also do get Will Ospreay continuing his feud with our scumbag. Next up, we've got a women's matchup, and this is where the show kind of goes into a series of WWE superstars on Saturday morning of quick squash matches, or I should say wrestling challenge on Sunday maybe. But we do get the Glamour, Mariah May versus Van, and the bell rings. We get May with some headbutts on Van and then sends her to the mat. Van tries to pick up, but ultimately we get a little bit of back and forth. We get some "We Want Tony" chants, and May then picks up Van and slams her onto the turnbuckle. May then stomps on May, and then we go back and forth with these two. We get a little break. We get a little picture-in-picture here. But at the end of the day, it's May that picks up Van and drops her with a Storm Zero and covers Van to get the 1, the 2, and the 3. Mariah May in a very quick kind of squash match. After the match, there is a wrapped gift handed to May. She opens it. It's a photo of Storm cuddling with May. Written on the back is "Die, Mariah, die." It's almost like "Die, Rocky, die" chants from the back in the Attitude Era. Storm enters the ring and attacks May, and May kicks Storm. May grabs a shoe, but Storm takes it from her, and Storm goes to nail May with the shoe, but officials and security break them up in this fight, and both women break free as the officials again go back at it and breaking them apart. And then we get into the ring. May leaves the ring as Storm holds up the photo showing Die Mariah Die to everybody in the arena. So again, quick little squash match by Mariah May, meant to be just a little chaos ensued in this one, but it was not too much to look at. We move ahead. We've got our next matchup in this one. It is the Bad Apple Bryan Keith versus Shibata. Keith charges at Shibata immediately, nails him with the bell rings, and then Shibata comes back and takes down Keith. And this matchup, again, was meant to try to bring the crowd back into the matchup. But we get some stomps in the arm of Shibata. We got Keith working on the arm. And then ultimately, another very quick matchup here. We go for break, and they come barely back from a picture-in-picture, and Shibata tries to fight back, but Keith kicks him, sends him down. Keith picks up Shibata and slams him down. And then Keith tries to pick up Shibata and headbutts him to the jaw. Shibata then sends Keith to the mat and puts him in an armbar, and Keith submits. Shibata is your winner here. And after the match, we do get Jericho and Big Bill running down to take out Shibata. Bill and Keith have Shibata up as Jericho goes to nail him. Hook's music hits, and he makes the going down into the ring. And I guess we are getting Hook versus Jericho at All In coming up, as Hook gets the upper hand in this one and also goes to suplex Jericho, and he escapes and retreats. So we are getting that one most likely at All In with Hook and Jericho, part 27 and a half, or whatever many times they've interacted. I remember when Hook was the feature and, the up-and-coming star, and I did have a debate on what AEW's plans with Hook would be, or would Austin Theory be the more popular out of the two young and up-and-comers on each brand. And right now it looks like either guys are kind of stuck in the mid-card a little bit, feuding with a couple different people. Hey guys, up next we got an Orange Cassidy an Orange Cassidy appearance here. He was the only one that could make it due to the hurricane, as his other tag partners were not able to make the match tonight. So therefore, he needed to find some backup, and he got it in the form of FTR, local boys, Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler, versus Rush, Roderick Strong, and the Beast Mordos. The bell rings, these guys go at it, and this is your typical match that we've been seeing if you've watched Collision or Dynamite. Little trios match back and forth, and really just kind of meant to be some high-paced action, which then ultimately, I believe they were trying to rely on the FTR pop to bring everybody back into this one. But it wasn't anything that we really haven't seen before here. We get a pretty decent-sized matchup, but it ultimately does end with Rush charging at Dax, but Cassidy's out of nowhere nails Rush with the big orange punch, and Rush recovers and chops FTR. Cassidy and FTR fight back, and Dax drops Rush and pins him. FTR and Orange Cassidy pull out the win. Following up after match, we get the Acclaim's music hits. Dax then has a mic, and he says it looks like the mic guys don't want him to talk. Dax says he appreciates all the Acclaim have done for AEW, but this is beyond AEW. We go to another pull apart, much like the women earlier, between the Acclaimed and FTR. So it was a night of pull aparts and very, very short matches in between the opening and the closing match. Speaking up next, before we get to that closing match, we got another squash match in the sense where we got Camille versus Jasmine Hayo and Clara Carter. And if you didn't know, Camille is all elite, and she is the new muscle of Mercedes Moné in this one. And we get the brick house coming out. Basically, Camille takes out both women in a 2-on-1 handicap match. And Monet looks on. Camille stomps on both women. They try to fight back, and she kicks both women, applies the torture rack, and a power bomb covers both women for the 1, the 2, the 3. Very Roman Reigns like, pinning both girls at the time. After the match, Monet grabs the mic, says hello to the brick house, Camille. Monet then says Britt Baker is suspended until All In, so we won't get much of that. Monet then again says that Baker is not here tonight. Well, she is suspended due to the rumors of what happened in the back previous weeks with MJF and that altercation. But Monet is the best And Shivani interrupts and says that Tony Khan has overruled the Elite and has lifted the suspension of Britt Baker. And we go to Baker via satellite. Baker says, when things don't go Monet's way, she takes the ball and goes home. Baker says that she's just the flavor of the month for her. Baker says that at All In, she will be the first woman in an AEW to beat Mercedes Moné. That's all we get here is another quick squash match in the fold, and we get to the main event. It's the anything goes match, whatever way, whenever way you want it and want to have it. Jeff Jarrett versus Bryan Danielson. Special guest referee, WWE Hall of Famer, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Coming in just to be a guest here. We get music for Bryan Danielson. Jeff Jarrett comes behind and nails him. Very classic Jarrett, like with the guitar. Kerry and Jay Lethal come out and question what Jeff is doing. Jeff sends Danielson into the ring. The bell rings. Jarrett sends Danielson to the floor. Jeff Jarrett then sends Danielson over the barricade, fights over and goes to the stands. They go up and all around, then back and to eventually into the ring. We do get some trash cans. We get a little bit of a big right hand in this main event. Jarrett continues the assault on Danielson with a big right hand again. And then we get a little picture-in-picture action for the advertisement. And we get the fight eventually making its way back to the ring. We get some steel chairs to the gut action. And then we get Jarrett grabbing more steel chairs. And then we get another big right hand. Ultimately, fast forward a little bit, we get Danielson sending Jarrett into the steel steps from the apron. Danielson leaps off, but Jarrett hits him with a steel chair, thinking wise, thinking smart. And then we then get, ultimately, Jarrett to the mat with a spider suplex. Danielson on the top rope. He comes down and drops Jarrett with a big missile drop kick. We get a "This is awesome" chant from these fans here at the show. Jarrett locks in the figure four on Danielson. Danielson breaks free by hitting Jarrett in the knees with the chair. Ow! And then Danielson counters and puts Jarrett in the label lock, and Jarrett breaks free. Both men are on their knees exchanging blows. Eventually, Jarrett goes for a stroke, but Danielson counters, and Danielson grabs a chair and uses it with a big knee to take Jarrett out, and Danielson covers Jarrett to get the pin. Bryan Danielson getting the win here. After the match, Karen Jarrett, Sanjay Dutt, and Jay Lethal all come to check on Jarrett. Wheeler Yuta comes down and to check on Danielson. Steamboat comes into the ring now, the Hall of Famer of the Dragon, to check on Bryan Danielson, and Jarrett is bleeding from his ear. Steamboat goes over to Jarrett to help up his fellow WWE Hall of Famer. We forget about that. And Steamboat raises the hand of both Danielson and Jeff Jarrett. Danielson and Jarrett shake hands, then hug. Swerve in the house. It's whose house? Swerve's house. Prince Nana out with them. Swerve grabs the mic. He says, "We witnessed three great legends on TBS before our eyes. Now we get to see Swerve Strickland." He says these are all men who have defined wrestling on his network. Swerve says the only thing standing between Bryan and the title is Swerve himself. Swerve says he will retire Danielson at All In, and his legacy will be his. Swerve asks Bryan how he is feeling after the match. Then he says, imagine what it'll do to Bryan. A great test. Swerve says he wants a test before All In. So Swerve says next week, the champ is here. He's winning. He's going to go against Wheeler Yuta. Swerve says he wants Bryan to have a front row seat for his fellow Blackpool Combat Club member while he is the most dangerous man in AEW. And the show is off the air. We got a little bit of all chaotic matchup here. Got some commercial breaks all through the arena. Not a bad overall match to end the night. But we got to ask, was this a main event? And was this an AEW Dynamite that you needed to see? Let's get into our final thoughts. Before we do that, if you like wrestling, hit that like button. It helps out my channel too. But if you've been a recent subscriber, thank you guys so much for jumping on here. And we try to do the best to interact with you guys in the comments. So leave a drop if you want. Let's get into our final thoughts though. Swerve being booked as the main event. It's a highlight. It's refreshing to see Swerve being involved in the main event of the franchise show that is Dynamite. Swerve, even though he wasn't in a match, he was able to interject himself into the ring and talk to a couple of Hall of Famers of the WWE, in addition to a future one in Bryan Danielson. But we promote the matchup like a champion should. He doesn't have to be actively involved every week, and I like that piece. I like the opening match with Will Ospreay and also MJF getting the job done and showing why he is the cornerstone and the best thing going on in AEW. But the middle just lacked. And if you guys were really watching AEW tonight, you could get away with the opening and the closing, and you probably get an idea and be just fine. There was not a lot in the middle that really made it memorable, and you'll most likely catch it on a overall YouTube highlight or just a quick recap, maybe even before the All In pay-per-view, just to show us a little what's going on. Well, those are my results and thoughts. Let me know yours down below. I'm going to head out. Thank you, each and every one of you. All right, guys, thank you so much. It's not goodbye. It's game over.